Niakoma, Akoma in Tawaso. It's Montsho and Nwasha, Akoma House Initiative, the art and science of Black love culture. I want to reach out to the family on this auspicious holiday occasion, and we want to say Happy Janame if you celebrate that, Emoja Karamu, or Happy Thanksgiving if that's what you're going to be celebrating at this time. But we wanted to come to you, and or if you don't celebrate any of that and you're enjoying this break time and just celebrating yourself, salute to you. We want to reach out and talk about something that we see happening in relationships that is we all can relate to, and that's our triggers in our relationships. So,
A lot of times, most of us have a problem when we find ourselves in the same situation over and over, and we don't really know how we got there. And I think a lot of times when we think about triggers, we think about negative triggers, or we think the word trigger is negative.
mhm.
Truthfully, it's just something that is unconscious in us that we don't notice sets off a little feedback for us. So most of the time, especially around the holidays, people say, oh, every time I'm with this person, I get into the same conversation or the same conflict, or I end up feeling the same walking away from them. And what we don't realize is everybody has triggers. They could be positive or they could be negative, but often what we're doing is we're in a loop of a pattern. And it's an unconscious kind of pattern that we kind of don't recognize it when it's coming or when we're in it, but after the fact, we can recognize that we have the same issue replaying over and over and over.
So the question on the floor for you is this: can you recognize and utilize your positive triggers in the same way or with the same frequency that you do your negative triggers? Because oftentimes we talk about the negative triggers, but we almost talk as if the word, like Nawasha said, trigger is synonymous with negative, but it actually can be a positive too. Statistically, what we see is the number one negative, the top four negative triggers that we see in relationships are triggers that make you feel abandonment, triggers that make you feel rejection, triggers that make you feel betrayal, and triggers that make you feel loss. Now, the top four positive things that we want triggered in our relationship are actually kind of what you would say is the opposite of these. And that would be commitment for abandonment, the trigger of commitment to be to know that you have commitment. Acceptance instead of rejection, to know that you are accepted for who you are or accepted despite your flaws. Then loyalty instead of betrayal, that someone is ride or die with you through thick and thin. And finally, the fourth and most important one, we want to grow. Instead of losing ourselves, losing our way, losing our loved ones, we want to grow in our experience in life and love. So one of the things that we utilize in our industry to is used in psychology in various different ways, in marketing in different
Even
ways,
education.
but in education, but it's very present in relationships, is something called a mnemonic device. And what is a mnemonic device? It is a specific term or word or phrase that helps you digest a larger concept or represents a trigger to a greater feeling or idea. And so, for example, one that we all knew as children is Roy G. Biv. That represents red, orange, yellow. Do I actually know? Red, orange, yellow, green, blue, indigo, and violet are the seven colors in the rainbow spectrum, in the light spectrum, right? And we utilize that. And I know as a professor, the one in education is, please excuse my dear Aunt Sally. Do you use that with your with
I
your
definitely taught
students?
that one a lot in math. Definitely used fanboys, the for and nor but or yet so for when you use a comma in writing in English. There's so many that I mean sometimes as a teacher I used to just suggest that people make up their own, right? Because you need to construct positive triggers for what you actually want, as opposed to the unconscious ones that kind of happen and we say it happens without us having any influence or without our control.
I know in our everyday culture, two things, the sensory perceptions around triggers are definitely sounds in the forms of songs and smells. Um, when you hear your favorite songs, especially around this holiday time, certain songs can bring up so much
Yeah,
joy
nostalgia.
and nostalgia and can make you remember the past and the happy times. Similarly, songs can bring up grief and loss and spin you into a circle of, you know, grief and loss and anger and fear, etc., about different things. And so songs are very powerful. I think of the five physical senses, smell is not given the pop culture understanding of the power that it has because smell is considered by many people in our industry to be the most prolific
Yeah, definitely when it
of
comes
the,
to
of
memory.
of the memory inducing or triggering things. And a trigger is just a physical stimulus that really anchors you. So on the back end of every trigger is an anchor. And an anchor is an emotional or psychological destination that you go to, right? When something has triggered you. So whether that is a positive thing or a negative thing, in the intimate relationship, we want you to have positive triggers. We want you to develop positive mnemonic devices that can help you to move your relationship to the place that you want it to go and to really navigate through hard times when things are jumping off, arguments or certain things that are happening. And we teach you how to do those. But culturally, I think, when we look back at our indigenous culture, we see that there were so many things that have carried on today, like markings on the face, certain markings. And I'm not talking about the scarring. That was a new phenomenon that we started for a particular reason and then kept it going after that reason was even necessary. Now we're just doing it as tradition, but black people didn't always scar their face. That we were doing that to ward off slavers. But the certain markings and certain, like we see in many of our indigenous cultures, the pineal dot is accentuated with ink, and the color that you use means so many different things, right? So there are a litany of things that we do, right, when we are looking to trigger. Some things could include drum patterns. Like, so if you're a dancer or if you're a musician, certain patterns trigger you to certain emotions. The speed, the tempo, the cadence. If it's boom, boom, bap, or is it, these things accentuate a certain level of emotions. Now, when we're in an intimate relationship, we actually are going through those. The looks that we give, the way we say something like, how you doing versus how you doing? Or, ooh, how you doing? You know what I mean? Like all of these things really represent different things. And so when we're established and we're in deep intimacy in our emotional relationships, our triggers are ever present. And a lot of times they're causing us problems. So we worked with a couple recently and we were talking about beliefs because one of the things the triggers anchor us to is our core beliefs. And our beliefs are either going to limit us or they're going to liberate us, right? And so we were talking with this couple, beautiful couple, and the brother was expressing a block. And so Nwasha had asked him, when you see her do this or you see her say this, what do you say to yourself? And he said, what I say all the time is, oh shit, here we go again. Here we go again, right? And so Nawasha walked him through this elevation strategy of what else could you say? What is something else that you could say that you know that represents a different kind of emotional place, puts you in resources. And initially he starts saying, I don't want to go here again. And Nawasha, gently walked with him and helped him see that we don't want to say what we don't want to do. We actually want to say what you do. And so the four of us were kind of working, or at least the three of us. She was silently watching, his wife, but me, him, and Nawasha were coming. And then I had a divine inspiration of, here we grow again. Because now when we're in these situations where you need to utilize some of the techniques that we're talking, instead of here we go again, this is an opportunity for you to grow and to show each other that you have grown. Because they said, we're utilizing certain techniques that y'all taught us. They work sometimes, but then other times we get stuck in our patterns, and I'd be like, oh shit, here we go again. And so Nawasha helped walk him through, here we grow again, and what that could engender inside of you, and how it could create a positive trigger. And when you have a positive trigger, it opens up your resources, and so your emotional resources, and then you can work through issues, you can solve problems, you can be together in harmony. So anything you want to say?
That's it.
Okay, so that's what we want to say. So if you are looking to get these kind of techniques, or you would like to work with us or have us work with you so that you can manage your mnemonic devices, you can create mnemonic devices that work for you.
And be positively triggered. Like
Right,
you
you want
want
to
to
be
have,
positively triggered.
you want something, you want to be in control and empowered in what could influence you. And it's really a great understanding to come to, that if you say something, there's a whole mannerism that goes with it. There's an internal process, there's a feeling with what you're saying to yourself. If you can come up with something that leaves you in a more resourceful, empowered, forward thinking, fulfilled, love and life affirming way, that would be better for your relationship. Even in the midst of some conflict, you need to have the thing that's going to trigger you to actually resolving the conflict. And so many times when we've come up against a wall, that's where we stay. And we think that changing the person out is going to change the problems or change the issues. And we want new triggers.
After about two, you know it ain't the person, it's you.
Well, that's what we all should know that. But
After
many
three, but
times
some of us on eight.
just the person's voice, their look, something, it can be a trigger, right? That we are unconscious about. It's so much more empowering to let something and to create something that can positively trigger you. So you're not at the mercy of random, triggers happening without your influence. Those things are when we're resisting and we're fighting. And I'm not saying like fighting a person, but fighting even ourselves or a situation. It takes so much of our energy to maintain resistance. You want to set up something that is not another forced thing that builds more resistance, even on the way to success. Ideally, you want something to happen that is with ease, that you really embody, that feels natural to you. And that's why it's so important to be able to come up with something like what Montsho's saying. When you say, here we go again, even for me, I would say, ugh. I would roll my eyes. I would have a certain kind of, and these are things that we don't know that we're often doing that another person can see. But if I said, here we grow again, it's a completely different energy.
Yeah, and we
Like
told them,
literally.
put your hand on your heart and say, here we grow again. This is an opportunity now
And those
for
things,
us to show our skills.
it'll free you into being in the state to be able to solve problems. So nothing is the magic that is fake that we sometimes romanticize and want to copy from our fantasies or from some cartoon or book that we read when we were a child. But the true magic is alchemy. The true magic is transmutation. If you can adjust your pattern, if you can interrupt something, set up a new pattern, If you can do that in the same kind of reflex of what was unconscious and so-called negative, then that is magic because you're changing a situation, you're changing your relationship, you're changing yourself. And that's really what we all want, is to go in the direction of what's fulfilling, but we're not taught how to.
Right.
So this is one thing that you can use that first is the consciousness of checking, how am I triggering myself? What do I say? What does somebody else say that makes me have an automatic response? And then making a conscious decision of what would I want my response to be? What do I need my response to be? And how can I automatically trigger myself with that?
So that's what we want to help you do. All year, all focus, this year's focus of Akoma Day is developing relationship skills. Black people, this is what we need, y'all. We need to develop skills. So understanding and managing triggers, using demonic devices,
Demonic.
demonic, mnemonic, sounds similar. For some of us, they are demonic devices.
That's a sign. It's late.
But we want to teach you how to utilize mnemonic devices and how to anchor them in your physiology, as Nwasha was showing. But then also how to control the triggers that are happening to you. This is a very triggering time, this time that we're going into. I was telling someone yesterday, I feel like it starts right around Halloween in the Northwestern world, and then it goes until January, or even sometimes into Akoma Day and the Valentine's Day season. It is, these holidays are bang, bang, bang. They're intense emotion. It's the magnification of love, the
And we're introduced to
magnification
them when we're
of
young, which is where a lot of beliefs
of
come from.
problems. Yup, they trigger our core beliefs. They help us. They inspire us to reevaluate a lot of things, and so our relationships get real strange at this time. The highs are extremely high, and the lows are extremely low. So we see the increase in suicide. We see heart disease and strokes. This is heart disease and stroke season. It starts tomorrow. Actually, the most strokes and heart disease are coming, heart attacks are coming in this time of the year because of this BAD, Black American diet that we have, or SAD, Standard American diet that we have. So especially around these holidays where we eat in this unsold food, right? So we have to be conscious of all of this stuff, and we want to serve you to help you to better, to be more effective in your relationship. So if you want that help and you want to get out of being triggered in an unconscious way outside of your control, then utilize the link, the bit.ly soulmate strategy link, get a consultation, and allow us to serve you in your intimate love relationship. So this is our mission and goal. Until then, we are here for you, and we want you to enjoy your Emoja Karamu, your Janame, your Thanksgiving, or your time off. Until we see you again, as always.
Miyakoma.